It is 6:32. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Old Saybrook Police Commission to order. Let us stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chief, before I ask for a moment of silence, I understand you have a statement you would like to read?
Yes, regrettably, I have a statement that I'd like to read and just put on the record. This was sent out statewide to every single law enforcement agency and to all media outlets on Saturday. It is with deep regret and much sadness that the Old Saybrook Department of Police Services announced the passing of retired Police Chief Edmund H. Mosca. He passed away peacefully with his family by his side. Chief Mosca was the fourth and longest serving police chief in Old Saybrook until his retirement in 2009. His distinguished career included serving as the vice president at large for the International Association of Chiefs of Police, serving in every single executive leadership role for the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association, and serving as a very long time chairman of the Police Officer Standards and Training Council and the council before that, before it was actually called POST. His contributions to the Old Saybrook, state of Connecticut, and national law enforcement communities are both immense and immeasurable. We will forever be grateful for his contributions to our profession. The department is grieving with the chief's friends and family and will be working with them to respectfully carry out their and Chief Mosca's final wishes. And so on Saturday, I ordered all personnel to wear their badge shrouds. Today, we applied black ribbons bearing Chief Mosca's name to the building. That'll stay there for 30 days. We have bunting on our sign and bunting above our front door. Our flags were lowered at the time of death notification, and they will remain that way until the proper amount of time. And then we'll be taking a kind of a minor role at the family's request at both the wake tomorrow from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Robertson and Wright Funeral Home in Essex. And then his funeral mass will be at St. John's on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then the burial will be private, just family and invited guests only. So we will be bringing in extra people to make sure that that is properly covered and that Chief Mosca gets the respect that he most certainly deserves.
With that, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just add to what you said, that a couple of years ago, I never met Chief Mosca, but a couple of years ago, Commissioner Kaye located on the web a tape of testimony that Chief Mosca gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee on the subject of Justice Souter's nomination to the Supreme Court. And the chair of the Judiciary Committee at the time was then Senator Joe Biden. And Senator Biden introduced Chief Mosca as the chief of police of the Old Saybrook, Massachusetts Department of Police. And departing from his prepared remarks, Chief Mosca said, "Let me correct that. Since 1635, Old Saybrook has proudly been located in the state of Connecticut." And that gives you some measure of the sense of humor, gentleness, and wisdom, practical wisdom of the man. With that, let me turn to comments from the public. We have one person in the real audience, this is the real live audience. We have a few people in the virtual audience. If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. None?
Nope, we do have one.
Okay.
Elizabeth Coffey.
Okay. Ms. Coffey, you are on. Please.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. I'm just here. I'd like to, I actually thought that there were going to be public comments at the end. I just am here to pass along some information to the police commission that I think that they need to have, as well as the public.
Please tell us.
Well, it came to my attention through one of my daughters on November 22nd that my youngest child had made allegations against my ex-husband that were sexual in nature. My ex-husband is a volunteer with the Old Saybrook Fire Department. It's been my experience with the Old Saybrook Police Department, and this might have something to do with why you cannot retain police officers also.
Well, let me interrupt if I may. This strikes me as the sort of subject that you should take up with the police department directly rather than.
I have, sir. And if you let me finish, I'm going to explain to you why I have gone to police departments. I've also gone to your first selectman. I am in fear of my life and safety from your police chief and some of your officers in town. That is why I'm coming to you, because I feel I have nowhere else to turn.
Okay. Have you expressed that concern to the chief of police under standing order 4.6?
I don't know what standing order 4.6 is. I did go
Ms. Coffey,
to.
why don't we make a point to discuss whatever is bothering you tomorrow? And I'll take a look. Did you recently make a complaint? And if so, I can review that and give you a
Well, I'd
call.
really like it to be a matter of public record, because I have had experience with the Old Saybrook Police Department where I've reported my rape and it was never, the person was never arrested. And again, it's the same person that my daughter has come out and made sexual allegations against when she was 4. I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't feel at the time I was heard. In fact, 2 detectives from the Old Saybrook Police Department showed up at the hotel room I was at investigating that rape. And they said to me directly that if I confessed to an arson that I did not commit, that they would arrest my husband. Again.
I think, let me interrupt again, because I think this is not the appropriate subject for public comment. This is, it seems to me, something that is very much within the province of our chief of police under his general order 4.6. I urge you to go online, look it up. It's right on the police department's website.
Yes, sir.
And pay specific attention to the provision in it that deals with persons having complaints, but feeling uncertain about their safety because of those complaints. That is specifically dealt with in the general order, and I have to say I'm confident that Chief Spera will be sensitive to that. So thank you for your comment, and I think we should move on to see if anyone else is interested in public comment. Thank you, Ms. Coffey. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. With that, let's move on to the meeting minutes for our regular meeting of February 26th. I invite a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to correspondence. The chair has nothing to report. Does any member of the commission have any correspondence to report? Chief, do you have any?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Let's move on to executive reports. Chief, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So the fiscal 25 budget process, want to thank everyone who attended the Board of Finance meeting. Yeah. And I appreciate the support with that. So thankfully, the Board of Finance has approved both the municipal and Board of Education budgets as presented by the Board of Selectmen, which shows confidence in the process, so we appreciate them doing that. Our next item on the agenda will be a town meeting, and that town meeting must adjourn by town charter to referendum, and then referendum sometime in May, I would imagine, right? Yeah. And then it will go to our citizens for a vote, but I think everyone should feel very confident that the process was thorough, transparent, as it always is, and I appreciate everyone that is involved in the process. Moving on to the 2024 operating budget. As always, you are supplied with the information. I have nothing that I find concerning at this point, at this period in the year. Nothing.
Any questions?
No, the only comment for me is that about 8.5 months have passed, and that would be about 71% of the year gone. We are 60 roughly % spent on our budget. And the only one that's a little bit higher is the general expenditures. So that's at 74%, which I think, we're in really good shape with this. And it looks like the year will end in a good place.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. The percentages are always a little bit off because some of the bills are due July 1st.
Correct.
So they don't flow that, natural progression. And so we'll always be a little bit more than what the year has gone by. I would love to say 50% of the year has gone by and we've expended 50% of the budget, but because things are front loaded, we never get to say that. So being where we are is very comfortable.
All right. Chief, next.
The off-budget accounts have been provided for you in the normal fashion. Again, no,
Are there any questions?
Right, do you have a question?
Okay. Personnel matters,
none to report other than what we'll discuss in executive session.
professional update, professional
No,
development.
nothing to report there. And the activity report is in your packet.
I just had one request on the activity report, and that is if you could explain so that everyone can understand what is included with the category that has the most activity, patrol check.
Yeah, so patrol check is a function normally conducted on our midnight shift, where they check different businesses in town to prove that they were in a specific area, checking businesses. So while they'll say, let's say they call in a patrol check at Staples, that means they've checked not only Staples, but the businesses in that area. Sometimes there are targeted patrol checks where we have a concern or we have information that there might be a burglary or a stolen car, or car to be stolen, and then we'll direct those patrol checks. It's interesting that you point that out because every year in my budget presentation, I always give you that formula for staffing.
These are proactive.
Yeah, and these numbers are specifically not included in that formula.
Oh.
Yeah, so if they were, it'd be very easy for a law enforcement agency to overly inflate their numbers to then generate saying that they need more personnel. So that is specifically excluded from any of our formulas when we do manpower calculations.
I thought that was an important aspect to bring out.
Sure, and again, on our interactive website, you can actually select patrol checks and see which officers are doing them and show your own heat map of where they are in town. So that's one of the natures that you have full access to on our very, very transparent website about our activity.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the missing number 123, the missing runaway found person, how does that work? Like those numbers kind of start at 32, they end at 17. Like, are those just reports that come into you? Or are those things that
So, for the missing, runaway and found, people, one line below that, it's 3 and 1 instead of 32. If we had 32 missing people in January, that'd be a lot of missing people. So we had 3 in January, 1 in February. So, these numbers, if you start at the top where abduction is 101 and
Right.
go all the way down, these have to do with our dispatch protocols. So when you call the police department, the dispatchers ask key questions. Your address, where you're calling
Right.
from, what's the nature, and then they go into a protocol where there's scripted questions that get asked. And as those questions are asked, answers from the caller input it to the system, and then the system follows an algorithm to determine which category it should be in and what
Oh,
the
okay.
response should be. And so we create a report by dispatch protocol.
Okay.
And I'll see if the meeting about that was like a year ago. When did we have the dispatcher day? A little bit
Oh, that
over a
was
year ago?
that was the very first one under the new commission.
Yeah, so I can see if that video is still around. If it is, I can send it to you and that will explain the whole process. And if not, be more than happy to sit
Yeah.
with you on the side.
I just saw that and I was like,
That should be on the drive, I think.
Is that on your drive?
That should be,
Yeah, that's been very helpful. Thank you.
hope it's entertaining.
Well, I'm not really watching them. I'm fine with it, just sending them in.
There's nothing else under executive reports. Let's move on to item 6, discussion concerning amended bylaws. Commissioner Nutter Francesco, this is
Want me
yours.
to handle this one? Okay, well, thank you, Chief, for putting this together for us. With the bylaws that we approved over the last 18 months. It was actually good to see all of them in here like that. I have a couple of things that I just wanted to make note of. There's, in the table of contents, for just changes, probably about halfway down, there's something here that says role of commission meetings. That should be out. I don't know where that came from, so that should be deleted.
Okay.
And the page number along with it. The other thing that I noticed as I went through was there were the responsibility of commissioners. The brand new one on page 5. We had set it up so that each one of these items, these statements, had a number to them. So if we could get those numbers back in.
So if you notice, all numbering was removed from the entire document.
Yes.
Which is what I thought was the direction that the commission wanted us to go in.
Absolutely the reverse.
Okay.
I wanted numbers so that going forward, we could refer to it as page 6, item 8A or whatever it was.
So do you want each section to be like an article, like name, Article 1, authority, Article 2?
Sure. Or A, B, C, D, and then within that article, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do you want each paragraph numbered?
Each paragraph should be
No.
either numbered or a subparagraph.
Each
A.
heading.
Each heading should be numbered, and then within that,
So let's just, would you mind just taking 5 minutes and doing this? All right, so let's, commission mission statement doesn't get one table of contents, but name, so that would either be a name or Article 1 name.
I would say Article 1, Roman 1.
Yes, Roman 1 would be great.
Okay, but I'm gonna actually write the word Article 1 dash name.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't even do that. I would just put number 1,
Yeah.
Roman numeral 1. And then the rest of them just get the Roman numerals as we
So
go through.
authority is 2, I just wanna make sure we get this right.
Right,
Commission, the commission
would be
is 3.
3, I.
Commission, yeah, there you go. I got that part. Commission officers 4, chairman 5, which is V.
V, yes.
Vice chairman 6, secretary 7, executive board 8. Triple I action there. Responsibilities 9.
9, but then within responsibilities, each one of these should get,
So that would be A. That would be A, B, C, D.
we could do that, sure.
And then code of conduct.
Same thing. A, B, C, all the way down to the end.
Well, shouldn't it be like,
Wait, what's
Roll of
Well, no,
Commission
roll of
B, A.
commissioners would be A.
And
Yeah,
then the
and
other
then
one
1,
B.
2.
Okay.
That's how I would,
A.
And then,
All right,
That's
that's,
how-
that's good, thank you.
right, and code of conduct would be B.
B,
and then
and
1,
then
2,
all
3.
And
of,
then 1, 2, 3,
or,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Bottom of 5, top of 6 is 11, 12, 13, non-Roman numerals. Then for commission meetings, I believe that will be 10. If I did that correctly, let's take a look. So I think 9 is responsibilities of commissioners. So 10 would be commission meetings. Executive session would be 11. Regular meetings would be 12. Special meetings is 13. Emergency meetings would be 14.
okay, hold on a second
Yeah.
before you continue. Under executive sessions, this is what got me, but the second paragraph should begin number 1. Because each of these items is a number within that heading. Otherwise, they just don't make sense.
So next to discussion, you want the number 1.
Number 1,
All right, and then strategy
strategy
2,
2,
matters 3, discussion 4. What do you want next to the public? Is that an A or is that nothing?
Well, there's no B.
nothing. Right, there would be nothing on that paragraph. That's just an introductory
All right,
paragraph.
4, so 5, and then
And
6.
6.
Got it?
Yep.
All right, so emergency meetings, so we're at 13, that'd be 14. Meeting cancellation is 15, conduct of business, parliamentary procedures, rules of order would be 16. Old Saybrook Police Fund would be 17. Public comment, conduct and procedure would be 18.
18, and within that, it should be numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, not the first paragraph, but beyond that.
So starting with
With
3.
3,
So you want
yes.
that, and number 1 next to
Number
that?
1.
2,
This reflects the way it was.
yep. 4, 5. Police Commission correspondence would be 19. Anything with those 2 paragraphs?
No.
Okay, and then an even 20 for amendments to bylaws.
Thank you.
No sub-numbering anywhere else, like in the Old Saybrook Police Fund, at top of page 8, which will be Roman numeral 17.
I don't think so. It was not that way originally.
Yeah, okay.
It's just an explanation.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll get that done for you.
And so then beyond that, next steps are, we're putting it online.
Yeah, it goes online, goes to the town clerk, goes to the library, and then obviously everyone here will get another copy.
Awesome, thank you.
Do you want it to come back for you to check the numbering, or do you want that just
I think we will be fine.
good? Okay. All right, we'll get that done.
Thank you.
No problem at all.
Excuse me, did the meeting not start at 7 today?
It started at 6:30, which is our usual starting time.
Oh, okay, because I went on the internet, it said 7 o'clock, on Mondays.
The agenda, 6:30.
I'm not saying the agenda, I'm just saying I went on the internet and under Town of Old Saybrook Police Commission, whatever is posting it, I'm not saying the town posted
We'll
it.
check that and fix it if that's the case.
Is there an opportunity for public comment at some point?
There's a public comment at the end as well as at the beginning, so.
Okay.
Let's move on to what is probably going to be the biggest subject of our discussion tonight, discussion and possible action concerning the second in command position. And I'd like to begin by thanking the chief for the effort that went into the proposal that you distributed last week. There's a lot here. And in order for us to approach it, I would suggest, and I think the chief, you also suggested that we begin with the commission discussing and deciding, you know, what we envision as the second in command position. You had outlined 3 different possibilities. I think that covers the waterfront. And I think they all have some advantages and some concerns. I'd like to start with discussing the idea that the second in command position would be filled by someone with the title of deputy chief. And I can, before I begin that discussion, I wanted to focus on something that was in your communication to us, Chief, which was that under the collective bargaining agreement, the captain and below are all positions that are entitled to be filled internally. Is that what you were suggesting to us?
Probably not exactly. So can I back up just
Sure.
30 seconds?
I
Just so the
want to have
public,
an understanding.
yeah, the public kind of follows where we are. So this is online, obviously, so any member of the public can read it. But in my presentation to you, I outlined 6 decision points that I felt would flow in chronological order for the commission. The first decision point is decide the organizational structure of the agency, not specific to, but yet including whatever the title will be for the second in command position. And so my first decision point is not just title, but what the overall structure will look like in one fell swoop decision. When the commission chooses to authorize a new structure, it does not mean that everything has to be filled right away, right? It could be a work in progress to develop that structure, but the framework has to be established first. Currently, the collective bargaining agreement says anyone below the rank of at and below the rank of master sergeant must be part of our union.
Okay.
Any additional positions above the rank of master sergeant may be subject to being members of our union. The union would submit a demand to bargain and include those positions into the bargaining unit, of which the town would have to hear their case. The law allows us to have one person and or one rank, I'm a little confused on exactly what it states, outside of the union. So if you were to make a deputy chief of police, right, which rank wise, you don't get closer to the chief than deputy chief, then anything below the deputy chief would be subject to union representation.
Can I have a question before? I
Yeah,
don't
of
want to
course.
forget that.
No.
So you just made a comment about the master sergeant and all that.
Mhm.
Where in the collective bargaining is that located? Because-
The recognition clause. So there should be a recognition clause that talks about who, if you throw me the contract, I can go right to it. Who has to be a member of the bargaining unit. So, let's see, Article 1. Article, that's where I'm getting my articles from. Within the meaning of section 7-471 of the Connecticut General Statutes, the town hereby recognizes the union as the exclusive bargaining agent for the purpose of collective bargaining for hours, wages, and other conditions of employment for all non-probationary, uniformed, and investigatory employees, but excluding all personnel above the rank of master sergeant. So that's where it's in the contract that says that. So if you create a deputy chief of police position, and then you also create a captain or a lieutenant, the union has the right to come in and say, well, we would like to change our recognition clause, because you just can't make a bunch of different ranks outside of the collective bargaining unit. We never had a lieutenant in the past. We haven't had a captain in the union in the past, but you already got your one position or one person as the deputy chief. So now we want to change our recognition clause for everyone at or under the rank of captain, right? I would assume that that's what the bargaining unit would do. And then the town would go through impact bargaining with the collective bargaining unit to decide exactly what that recognition clause says, like wages and other terms of employment with respect to those newly established positions. That, by the way, is nothing we should be afraid of. Like, that's it, all that is a process. And we're in the middle of union negotiations right now, so that could just be naturally part of the process, right? So when we talk about union negotiating, it doesn't have to be a fight or an argument. It's a collaborative discussion, or should be, to figure out how this all works legally.
Going back to my suggestion that we focus on a deputy chief. I am mindful of the information you've given us about the union situation, the collective bargaining agreement. I am also mindful of what I feel is a signal that you've been giving this commission and other elected bodies in town that you might be near pulling the trigger on enjoying the benefits of the retirement package that you have and being able to get other employment at a relatively young age that would be also very rewarding to you as your service here. I have asked you directly if you can give us some sense of your timeline, and I understand you're declining to give us that information. But that leaves me with a concern that the town of Old Saybrook could find itself in the position where it had very little time to find a chief of police to replace you. And there's many who would say you're irreplaceable. But I have a concern that we would be derelict if we didn't have succession planning for you. And that's why I am attracted to the idea of a deputy chief. I understand that that might mean more dollars than we have in the budget currently, especially during a period of overlap. And we can't put a timeline on that. I understand that. But that is really the genesis of my concern. And if you would like to speak to that, I welcome it.
I do. But my first comment is going to be one of respectful advisement. So being an attorney, you know of certain phrases called protected classes. I am in one of those, and you cannot ask me publicly about when I plan on retiring or having that conversation in public. It's a violation of the law. And so I would ask you and others not to do that again, because it's just inappropriate and improper.
Chief,
I have said, no, let me finish, please. I have said over and over again that I would entertain those discussions in its proper place, which would be executive session. And so I understand what you're saying. I understand the reasoning for it, and I don't disagree with either. But there's an appropriate time and certainly an appropriate place to have those discussions, and that is not an open session.
okay, I thank you for educating me. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I'm a labor lawyer or a municipal lawyer. Two areas that I have never practiced, including along with that criminal law, divorce law. There are lots of areas of practice I never.
Well, let me clear that room, Rob. There's no divorce coming. My wife and I are very much in love, so.
So for tonight's discussion, we're looking for what we're gonna do for the second in command.
I don't think it's second in command. I think that the discussion, the way I would ask this commission to phrase it, and again, I don't even have to be involved in this discussion. But what I would do is I would ask the commission to think not just second in command, but what the overall structure will look like. And
Yes,
so,
hierarchy.
yeah, the hierarchy of the
But I'm just
department.
saying, we don't need to discuss you tonight. Like, that's, to me, that's off the table. We're discussing from there down.
Correct.
Right, but I think that this commission generally feels a sense of urgency. And from some of the stuff that you portrayed in here, it seems like there will be a lengthy process timeline for this. I understand that you're looking for a hierarchy and a structure. And I am very comfortable with some of the suggestions that you made in here as far as what that would look like.
Highlighting in tabs, I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Well, I told, 3 times I went through this
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
this,
It's
it
a
was
lot to digest.
complicated, yes. And I have to say, falling on some of this, I would say the option B for me, where we would look at a deputy, the chief of police, a deputy chief, 2 lieutenants, master sergeant, patrol sergeants beyond that. And again, this doesn't, like you say, have to be done all at once, so that even for budgetary purposes, it can be spread out over a period of time. So for people who sit here in the Board of Finance, it's not, you know, a hair on fire kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I also think, do you mind if I?
no, go right ahead.
So I also think that as the commission, and as you allow me to collaborate, as we have this discussion publicly, we are sending a message to our sworn personnel on what we feel their value is in the future of the organization. So the police department, right, the day I choose to leave voluntarily or involuntarily, God forbid something happens to me, but the 911 call is going to come in, right? We're always going to be responding and serving. We don't stop. And I have said very clearly that whoever, whenever the new police chief sits in, he or she should take the department to the next level. That's important, right? As a good leader, you should know on day one, the next leader is now bringing it to a higher and better place. And I think that we need to be sensitive when we're talking about the future of the agency, that we're including our current personnel and allowing them to envision moving up in the agency, taking on additional leadership roles. Otherwise, I think we're contributing to our retention issue by saying, we don't value you and we don't see you as part of our big picture leadership structure. And so option B, as you alluded to, does allow for 2 people to be promoted to the rank of lieutenant, a time period where they're both at that position, and then a follow-up promotion where one of them would be promoted to captain and one of them would stay a lieutenant. I've also mentioned, just so the public that's listening but hasn't had a chance to read this, the rank of master sergeant in all of my proposals, I have that being eliminated through attrition. So if the master sergeant currently became a lieutenant, we would not backfill the master sergeant level. If the master sergeant retired, and he has not said that he's going to, but if the master sergeant retired, we would not seek to replace that. So through attrition, that level of management would disappear. And so what I'd like to see is the executive level of management, a middle management, and then first line leadership. That's a good structure for a policing organization. Sorry.
My question I was gonna ask you was, finding a deputy chief, now, there must be some kind of time frame where it takes to get a deputy chief. What is the time frame average to find a deputy chief? Because it's probably a lot of research that has to go into everything.
Yeah, here's the way I'll answer that question. I think it's going to be a little bit longer for the town of Old Saybrook because the town of Old Saybrook is not used to doing that. So all of our executives, with the exception of one police chief, I think he was the second police chief, have been internal promotions. And I say that because no one has a police commission, a board of finance, a board of selectmen, no one's gotten around the table to decide long-term benefits, right? It's always been, oh, you're just part of the police pension. Because you've served your years, and 25 years of service, which is what our pension is now, makes sense for an internal candidate. But if you're looking to bring someone in from the outside that maybe has 20 years of experience in law enforcement, that person's not going to be attracted to a 25-year pension because maybe they don't want to work another 25 years in law enforcement. And so my roundabout answer to your question is, I think that you have to decide the benefit package before you even ask people to apply for the position, because we have to list salary. And one of the most common questions would be, if I was applying to the position, what are the benefits? And we can't say, we'll work on that later, because then we might miss good quality candidates. There should be some negotiation at the end, but the town at that point should know generally, are they giving health insurance? What health insurance, plan are they? What will be the employee cost share? What does vacation time look like? What does sick time look like? All those things really need to be decided before we advertise. So because of that reason, I think it will take us a little bit longer. And I think the search, I would say it should sit out there for a month, and then we get applications and we decide who we want to advance to an assessment center style process, which I've spoken about in the document that I handed you the other week. And then, we go from there. But I would like to see, if we chose B, that those 2 lieutenants participate in that process, because that's great executive development for them to see how that process flows.
To go back to your question, Mark, about, what's the level of seniority?
No, not seniority. I want to know how long it would take the
Oh,
whole process
From
of,
start to finish.
starting where we are and getting a person. Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? Is it what? How long does it take? Is there an average that it takes?
So I would say it depends on how long the town of Old Saybrook takes to codify a benefit package. Then we release it for about a month, and then so I would say you could do it in 90 to 120 days after the town of Old Saybrook decides, what the benefit package would be. Because you're assuming that this person is already an administrator somewhere. I mean, I would hope that they would be. You saw some of my potential qualifications, and I would hope that they would just not want to give their current agency 2 weeks' notice.
Do we use like a job posting like CCM?
Oh, yeah, we certainly do that. CCM is one angle, but I think we would also use law enforcement specific ones,
Okay.
right? So we would use International Association of Chiefs of Police, we'd use the Chiefs of Police Association. I would directly solicit every single state and municipal law enforcement agency in
Okay.
Connecticut. Because we'd want them to be Connecticut post-certified, and if
Yeah,
not, that
I
takes
knew
even
that you would
longer.
Utilize that, and I didn't know if you would utilize like a blanket overview.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
CCM.
Yep. Absolutely. So structure, and then we get into qualifications of each position, right? So that's kind of those decision points, the way I outline it. Really, you can't do one without the other, because then it's disorganized.
Let me back up. Let's assume that we're constrained by our current 25 sworn officers. How does this work?
There's nothing in this proposal that
Is inconsistent with that?
No, this is not adding any law enforcement positions at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mentioned it last time, and I know we talked a lot last time. At one point, the police commission authorized 4 new lieutenant positions. 4. And at the time, the department structure was chief, deputy chief, 1 lieutenant, and then patrol sergeants. And the commission chose to create 4 lieutenant positions. And the goal of that was to allow everyone to have some middle management experience, to then determine from those 4 individuals who would ascend into the deputy chief position when the deputy chief chose to retire. And well, I'd like to say that process worked out pretty well for me. Doing it for a while now, right? But so I was one of those 4 lieutenants promoted. And then eventually I was promoted from lieutenant to deputy chief, and then promoted from deputy chief to chief. And so the process that I've outlined for you, and that wasn't adding any law enforcement positions. We didn't add people. We added titles and responsibilities.
Well, you changed titles from sergeant to lieutenant.
Well, we maintain a list of sergeants. So the commission at that time actually said, if you have 4 years on, we want you in front of us. If you're interested, take the test, come in front of us. The commission chose to see all the talent that was available from that 4 years and up. And again, you can choose that, right? That's part of one of your decision points, which is the point 2, decide the qualifications for the positions and the ranks to be filled. That is your bailiwick.
But building in 2 lieutenants, I think, is important for several reasons. Retention is absolutely one of them, because we're sending that signal that there's promotion opportunities for people within the organization. But secondly, it also spreads out the workload a little bit more efficiently than having one chief at the top and then having, you know, a master sergeant without having any middle structure to it. So I like the idea of assigning 2 of our positions to lieutenant, which would mean then sergeants would also come up to the lieutenant, I would imagine, but then other people would have to come up to the sergeant's level. And eventually, this kind of a structure would be just beneficial, not just for now, but building in for the future, for a longer term than just the next year.
And might I add, that scenario creates a more beneficial environment for an outside deputy chief to successfully enter. So if an outside deputy chief enters now, it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on. Where do I fit in? If that deputy chief enters after the 2 lieutenants have taken on some of that workload, then it's easier to insert a new executive level manager because things are bifurcated, right? Workload has been dispersed. Now that deputy chief gets to supervise the lieutenants that are doing all those things and reports back to the chief. So if you said to me right now, you must choose, it's either 2 lieutenants or a deputy chief. All day long, I would say, let's look at the talent inside our agency and let's give 2 individuals the opportunity to rise and prove themselves.
Yes, but still with the thought that we.
A deputy chief
will
would happen, absolutely.
Deputy chief.
Yep.
And I think that we gotta, the way we'll get 2 lieutenants, if we keep them in the union. And by having a deputy chief and a chief, you got your 2 people that are not in the union. So we can either do an MOA or an MOU, whatever you guys call it. And I think it would be successful if we did it that way.
So my suggestion would be, and I to be honest with you, I don't know if the commission's ready to act tonight. I think there's still a lot of stuff to talk about. But along the lines of what you're thinking, I would change the structure to chief, deputy chief, 2 lieutenants. That allows for that bargaining to happen because a fear might be of, let's say, a sergeant right now. A fear of a sergeant might be leaving the bargaining unit to go into an at-will position before they've reached retirement, right? If there's a bad budget year and we choose not to lay off anyone in the bargaining unit, Town of Old Saybrook did that once, did not turn out well for the town. But an at-will administrative position could be easily on the chopping block, so to speak. If you have a family and a mortgage, you might not want to take that risk and go into the at-will position at 20 years because you have 5 more years to even earn a pension, right? And so I think people would feel more comfortable ascending to a union position than a non-union position, just for protection.
Was just asking.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on.
Couple questions, general questions. You included this general order 8.3. Is this an existing general order or
It
is this
is.
a draft?
Nope, that's an existing, that was part of our accreditation, so that is existing.
I noticed there's no effective date on it.
Correct, because everything comes out at once in the new manual, once we hit tier 3.
And is this patterned after Kalia?
Yes, not only
Post.
CLIA, but post, both.
And is it tracking it exactly or is it patterned after it?
I'd have to look at the model to see the difference.
The reason I was puzzling over this is that it starts out stating that its purpose is quote, to establish written guidelines for the promotional process for sworn officers of the Old Saybrook Department of Police Services. That's fine, but I would add, other than the position of chief of police, because I think it's up to the commission to.
Yeah, I think later on in the
It's not up to-
document,
It's not up to the chief of police to say.
well, I think it's later on in the document where it speaks to the powers of the commission.
It does, but given that, for example, it says the chief, at the end, the chief of police shall serve a probationary period of 1 year following his or her date of appointment.
Yes, which you'll find actually can't be the case, but we left it in there.
So, there are just a bunch of parts of this that I didn't strike me as making a lot, what I would think is a lot of sense. That's for another day.
So,
I am very curious as to how, given the structure of the collective bargaining agreement where we have 2 patrol officers and 1 sergeant on every shift. So that's 6 patrol officers and 3 sergeants every day. And we're on a 4-2-4-2 schedule. How that works without adding manpower, if you take people out of the sergeant ranks and put them into the lieutenant ranks, do the lieutenants now serve as sergeants? I don't think that serves us. It doesn't seem to me that is going the direction we want to go in. We want them to have significantly more administrative duties. How do we get there? I'd like to see that, how that works.
Yeah, so I tell you how it works very quickly. So first of all, in the past, when we did the 4 lieutenants, some of their responsibilities were patrol, because one of the things that we wanted to monitor during that time frame was technical competency with patrol-related operations. And the only way to see that is to make sure that they're in that position every so often, not every day. Secondly, we have special assignment positions currently that are being filled by lower ranked personnel, where those tasks would be absorbed by a new mid-level manager.
I'd like to see a flow chart, sort of how that works. I'm just having a tough time visualizing it. Yeah.
Well, so let me do this. Say a patrolman is working on tasks 1 through 5. And we decide that those tasks 1 through 5 are mid-management tasks, and they now are going to be assigned to a lieutenant. That employee at the lower rank that was doing those tasks no longer is assigned those tasks. They go back to patrol. So you've swapped 1 for 1.
Okay, then I guess what I would like to see is a department roster, and who are the people who are right now not doing patrol,
Well, everyone's doing patrol.
That's what I thought.
Everyone.
That's what I thought.
Right. And so in this document, I talk about what is deciding when the right time is, right? So we are excited that we've hired 4 people, 2 of which start the academy April 4th. But that starts their 27 weeks of training, plus 10 weeks of field training, right? So we won't see them as contributors to the work schedule for 37 weeks if all goes well.
8 or 9 months.
However, we have seen very recently 2 patrolmen become released from field training. So now they're personnel assets on the schedule. We have 1 person, 5.5 weeks or so, who'll be graduating the police academy, starting his 10 weeks of field training, and then becoming a personnel asset. We have 1 employee that's just come back from family medical leave, who is now back on the schedule. So we're starting to see our work schedule once again fill up with people. That's a happy time for us in the operation.
nice to hear.
And so these processes don't happen in a week, right? I talked to you about length of time for studying, for exams. So if this commission was to change the structure of the agency from chief, deputy chief to lieutenants, I would tell you that I'd be running a promotional process for lieutenant and sergeant at the same exact time. That way, if a sergeant gets promoted to lieutenant, the commission is already ready to promote a patrolman to sergeant, right? Because there's a domino effect to internal promotion. So my job as police chief would be to set the commission up for success so that the structure would not be harmed. We may decide at one point that we've interviewed and the commission has selected who's 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the lieutenant promotional list. That doesn't mean they get promoted that night, right? When we hire new people, what's the end of the motion? At a time where it's right best for the operation, da, da, da. So you can have a promotional process, rank people so everyone knows what their future is going to look like. And then when the time is right, that's when those promotions actually happen. So someone can come out number 1 on the lieutenant's test or a sergeant's test, the commission ranks them. And then maybe 30, 45 days later is when the promotion actually takes place. But we're ready to go. And so I'm trying to get the commission to make decisions, big picture decisions, and then let's get the ground game going so we can be successful together.
Didn't we at one point speak about having a committee assigned for this early on in these discussions?
We had talked, the chief had suggested basically a committee of the whole.
Correct.
We had also talked about having a smaller committee. We made no decision in either direction.
Right.
I think a small committee would be detrimental to the police commission. And I think so for a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of decision points. And if a subcommittee comes back to the whole committee and then the whole committee disagrees, you're just wasting time. You're just rudderless in the water. Secondly, I think it's good for all the commissioners to collaborate on the future structure of the agency. I mean, that is one of your main functions as an elected member of the police commission. And that's why I think all 7 elected commissioners really should be participating in that discussion.
I happen to agree with that. After consideration.
Yeah. Initially, when we talked, I think it was just early on in the days of where we were, how it was going to be.
And maybe at a time where you didn't realize how complicated this actually
It was
is, right?
before additional data
Yeah.
was supplied. It was a conversation.
I have a suggestion, which is that we entertain a motion to form a committee of the whole. That committee then meet not in a public meeting with Chief Sparrow to discuss with him his personal plans that we can't discuss in a public setting.
Well, that would still have to be a public meeting.
As
An
part of an
executive
executive session.
So the only way you can convene, and maybe you're about to say this, outside of the FOI requirement for a public meeting is to form an employee search committee. But right now you have not established positions to search for, so that would be premature. So if you decided tonight to create a deputy chief position, then you could become a committee of the whole as a search committee, and then those meetings would not be subject to FOI notice. But you can't, 7 of you can't convene as a group with me. I would love to do that over food and pastries of my choosing, but that would be improper.
Don't forget the dairy.
And right, exactly.
So, Chuck, are we gonna make a motion then tonight to decide what we're gonna pick from the chief, deputy chief, the 2 lieutenants?
I think we
I mean,
discussed that.
I don't think so.
So I wouldn't rush that. What I was hoping for tonight is you've all received this document. It's a lot of information, right? Renee and Carl have tremendous tenure on the police commission. So they've seen this evolve. Jessica's not here. It's important for you all to understand the decision points because they are very impactful to the future of the agency. And so my hope for tonight was we would preliminarily discuss those 6 decision points, right? Like, hey, let's kind of breeze over those qualifications that we listed. Let's talk a little bit about that just to get you more comfortable with the information. And then probably next meeting, I think you would be ready to make a motion on what the structure will be. And then based on that motion, then we decide if we're gonna talk to the union about these lieutenant positions and what qualifications we're gonna look for. I think that that's the path. I think it's too quick tonight to make that
When
call.
we had the four lieutenants, were they non-union?
So they were very
Or
interesting.
was that around the time of the union?
That was around the time of the union. So we did not enter into the bargaining unit,
Okay.
which was unique. But I think if the bargaining unit asked, I think the town would have had to say, yeah, you have to do the bargaining.
I am uncomfortable making any decision about structure without knowing more than we currently can know about the chief's timeline. And therefore, I would like to have a special meeting in which we can discuss with the chief his thoughts.
Again, I don't think the decision about my career overly impacts the structure other than timing. I think if this agency, if this commission wants our agency to have a chief of police, a deputy chief, and 2 lieutenants, one of which eventually becomes a captain, then that's your structure. If I choose to leave, I'm assuming you still want a chief, a deputy chief, a captain, and lieutenant, if you go with the scenario that we're talking about the most. So those titles won't change, the names might, but the titles won't change.
Well, I don't see it quite that way. I see that we could have a perfectly reasonable departmental structure with a chief, 2 lieutenants, and sergeants in patrol. But I'm uncomfortable with that structure if that leaves us vulnerable to an early need to find a person who could act and serve as chief of police. That's why I see the timing as a driver. And it may be that an ideal structure may involve more layers, 3 instead of 2. The chief and 2 lieutenants is 2, the chief and deputy, that's 3. But I don't currently understand how, given the need we have had to fill slots in patrol, and I know we've had a lot of success in our recent hires, but as you point out, they're still 8 or 9 months away from being assets in the patrol. And some of them probably longer than that, 2 of them. I'm not sure we have that luxury. And that's my anchor here, holding me back from plunging into looking for an ideal structure.
Okay, I would have to say that I respectfully disagree with all of that.
Sure.
I think that we do all want to know what's going on. And like I said earlier, there's that sense of urgency. But I can put that aside to try and look at this other stuff conceptually and say, this is what I think the department should look like. Because whether or not this chief is sitting in that seat as chief of police, we're still going to need a chief. We're still going to need down the road a deputy. And we're still going to need that middle management layer. So that to me is something I think we should really dig in and work on. And so we can also perhaps down the road have those other conversations. But right now, this is what I think we should be looking at.
After going through this booklet and seeing the way the booklet was put together, pretend he's not even our chief. We're gonna be wasting time if we're worried about what's going on with him. And I think we gotta start the procedure to hire people to get this done, and forget that he's even here. He could go work at Dairy Queen tomorrow and give this all up.
The queen outranks the chief though, so I don't know if I can.
So Chubb, if I understand correctly, you don't wanna get us locked into a hierarchy. Jill, you do? Am I getting this right? Okay, because
No.
even if we do vote on, if not tonight, but even if we do decide on the hierarchy, it doesn't mean we're promoting these people right away. We don't
Correct,
have enough
right.
patrol people to even consider we still need them, so the patrol people we have can't become sergeants, and then the sergeants can't become lieutenants.
But the process can happen.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
understand the process can happen, but I do agree with Chubb about, I mean, I think we make the hierarchy but we do have to concentrate on the deputy chief position. I really do.
I
think
agree
that.
with that.
I don't think I don't think that's disrespectful to the people in the police department. We're creating those other two positions that will create upward movement.
I think if you do all three at the same time, not put people in those spots, but announce that that's the structure.
Yes,
That's the most respectful thing you can do of our personnel.
Well, if you pick two
And
lieutenants,
respecting your position as well during that same process.
they can help with the process of getting the deputy chief. also.
They should, because it's phenomenal professional development for that.
Chief, can you flesh out for us what the respective responsibilities would be of the two lieutenants? Would they be overlapping? Would they be in separate silos? What do you see that as?
Well, so, depending on time frame, right? Like how long you wanted those lieutenants to work in a position before you were going to interview them again to become a captain. I would divvy up the time between administrative and operational responsibilities. That way, both individuals could have both experiences that they could talk about with the police commission. And then I would have the opportunity to observe them in those settings. So that could be anything from policy creation to overseeing special events to doing a little scheduling and budgeting work, working on little mini projects. I mean, there's lots of different things that you can assign a middle manager to do. My task would be not only to assign, but to mentor, as well as make observations so that I could comment on performance to the commission at the appropriate time.
Would it be practical for you to flesh that out in a little more detail with like a org chart with Lieutenant 1, these responsibilities, administrative and operational, Lieutenant 2, these responsibilities, administrative, operational?
So we're very situational in our business. So one of the things I said, I'll give you those job descriptions, but please don't get into the weeds with those, because things are very situational, very transactional. Let me give you an example.
Fluid.
Yes, so, say a sergeant was in charge of overseeing pistol permit applications. We had another patrolman leave, and now that sergeant's working patrol a little bit more. I might take that workload and give it to one of the lieutenants. It might sit there for 30 days, and then it might go to another sergeant again. And so to list out responsibilities and then to be held to that would be improper. It wouldn't.
I'm not suggesting being held to it. I'm just trying to get some kind of feel for, how this would work. I could see a lieutenant with administrative responsibilities and a lieutenant with operational responsibilities, scheduling and that. When you start mixing and matching, I get a little bit uncertain. I'm trying to get ready for tonight. I printed out the org chart for Hamden, which doesn't look like an org chart at all to me, but You know, there's lots of different activities, and there are far more activities than there are, you know, lieutenants and sergeants. So I didn't, there are no names attached with any of these, and I understand that.
I think that,
And by the way, this is a department with over 100
Yeah.
sworn
yeah,
officers.
I'm not
much
sure that's a
bigger.
good comparison, but
Richfield has more,
I-
that was more.
I think that respectfully, I don't think it's good to get in the weeds of who's going to be doing what. Because I think you'll get lost in that. I think that's a never-ending conversation. Because it's unhealthy for the commission to say, well, I don't think the lieutenant should do that. Maybe the captain should do that. The captain should do that. The deputy chief should do it. That's all operational. That's all under me. I get to decide who does what and when. I think the structure question is important. Now, your decision on structure, if you're going to that B example, is a migration, right? So it starts out chief of police, 2 lieutenants, master sergeant, patrol sergeants, and then it migrates to chief of police, captain, lieutenant, master sergeant. So part of the role of those 2 lieutenants will be actually auditioning like a job, on the job interview for that promotional opportunity of captain. And so it'll be my responsibility to make sure that both of those people have similar assignments and similar experiences to prepare them both for the opportunity to become the captain. My message to our agency would be, if you are interested in becoming a lieutenant, that should also mean you're interested in becoming captain, because one of the 2 will become a captain. And I like when people are competitive for promotions. I think that's healthy for the organization. And the cream rises to the top. And so that's why I think, you know, everyone seems to be attracted to this structure. I think that would be the smart way to go. I just want to make sure that our people have opportunities. And again, when we get to qualifications, you can do what a previous commission did and say, listen, we're going to make the qualifications for that position lower so you can see more people. So in a small agency, only so many people can get promoted at a time. We might have patrolmen that have been patrolmen for a long time that are more than credentialed to be a lieutenant. I went from patrolman to lieutenant. I didn't get promoted to sergeant and then lieutenant. So again, that commission at that time said, we want to be exposed to whoever wants to be part of the agency's hierarchy. It's not like it's many people. So maybe the commission chooses to lower those qualifications internally to meet more folks who are looking to get promoted. And then you make those decisions based on testing, right? Assessment center skills, and then your interview.
I would suggest that we, at this point, not put any motion on the floor, that we continue to ponder among ourselves.
Do you want to talk about any of the qualifications?
I don't. The only question I had about the qualifications was,
Can we add or suggest additional qualifications?
sure.
Other than what was?
I presented this to start a discussion.
Okay,
This is not the final discussion.
Okay.
I mean, I have other input. I gave you a framework for you folks to have
okay.
a beneficial collaborative discussion. And I was hoping tonight that some folks might have questions about this stuff that I can give you answers to, but no decisions, just more stuff to chew on.
I think that we're all a little bit hung up on which way are we going, left or right? And this seems to come up time and time again on our agenda, and I feel that we need to have a little bit more of a concrete direction to work from and not just keep bringing it back for discussion.
And so I agree with you. What I would suggest is if you go to my 6 decision points, right, if you follow that process, you'll be successful. What I did not want to do, because I do not believe it is my place, I did not want to say, here is the proposal. That's my
Take it or leave
recommendation.
it, yeah.
That is not my role. These are big picture decisions. This is exactly what you were elected to do. So I feel that my role is to frame this conversation and give you all the information you need to make the best decision for our agency and for the town.
You gave us a good starting point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good information in this. And I've read it a couple of times, I'm getting ready to read it again. But I think, we should table this for tonight. We've hashed everything out as far as we can hash it.
Jackie, is your concern that we need to move forward with the hierarchy? Is that?
I think we need to
Just
move
move
forward with a plan. I
Okay.
feel like we're constantly in discussion mode and it comes back, we get new information, we talk about it, but we really don't have an action plan to say, okay, all of us each had the opportunity to read the packet, the proposal that the chief gave us. We had that time to do that. I thought tonight we would come up, yeah, that we were going to be prepared to have something aligned with an action plan.
So I would say to that, and I agree with you, I would say that then the commission should make a goal for itself that at next month's meeting, after you've had a month to deliberate and research, that no matter what, you're going to make a decision on what the structure of the agency will be. Decision point number 1, check.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a little bit loose.
Yeah.
And I would like something a little bit more concrete and that has substance to it.
I think once you decide on the structure, then the substance will start flowing very, very quickly. Like, so I listed proposed qualifications. And one of the things you see as we get higher in rank is a higher level of medical certification. And so I expect it tonight for one of you to say, what's the deal with that? And the deal with that is because we are the state of Connecticut licensed EMS first responder for the town of Old Saybrook, we are also an EMS agency. And so the hierarchy of the EMS agency has to have certification at specific levels so that you could administer the role of an EMS agency. In other words, I can't have a lower level EMS certified person supervising an EMS program of higher level providers. Makes no sense. You can't reach above to determine if they're doing their job right. You can only look below. And so as the higher we get in rank, that's why you see those qualifications, right? I also want to make sure.
Let me interrupt if I may.
Sure.
How much of a screen does that create for our candidates, for example, for deputy chief? Does that eliminate half of the population? Only 10% of the population? How common is it in Connecticut that officers who might be qualified otherwise are also EMS certified?
I don't know. But you can't be a member of our agency unless you are EMS certified, because it is one of our roles and responsibilities for the town. And so if you see an announcement that there's a deputy chief position available in Old Saybrook, you have to know when you look into the agency that they're also an EMS organization. It's a very, very important role that we provide and service that we provide to our community. So if you're not ready to supervise that agency, so every year when we renew our license, I have to list top 3 people in the agency and their certification levels. And so all of my second in commands have been at the emergency medical technician level once we rose to that level. So that's a very important element and
I
qualification to
assume
have.
that's not a post requirement, that's some other requirement?
That's a requirement on us because we're a licensed EMS agency.
And so what's the source of the requirement is my question.
I'm not following you.
You said it's because we're an EMS agency. Is there a statutory or some regulatory scheme that says this is what you're required to do as a
Like a
licensed
requirement,
EMS agent?
Yeah, I don't think it's spelled out specifically, but I think it's common sense that you can't be the deputy chief of an EMS organization if you don't have a certification that allows you to supervise subordinate personnel in that task. Right? So if I assign my deputy chief quality control and quality assurance of our emergency medical services pre-hospital emergency medical care program, they have to know, they have to have EMS knowledge to be able to do quality control and quality assurance.
But if they don't have that knowledge, you can assign the lieutenant.
But it would be inappropriate. It would be inappropriate, in my opinion, to have a second in command that was not at least an emergency medical technician. It would be a disservice to the organization.
How long
Let
does
me-
it take to get that training?
2-3 months. If
So
you're,
somebody could conceivably be hired without it and then get it.
and then fill it.
if that's what you chose, but then you would have to deal with someone who never obtained it, chose not to obtain it, and then what would you do?
Well, if they were, this is why I was asking the question, what kind of a screen is this?
We don't know. I mean, so I would put that out and let's see what we get for applications.
Well, what I was thinking is we make that a preferred category.
So you can't be on our staff in Old Saybrook unless you're a certified emergency medical responder.
Is that, but going back to what Chubb said,
That's a requirement because we're a EMS first responder agency. I'm saying as the number 2 person, they should have the higher, not the highest, but they should have the higher level of training. It's extremely important. And maybe you folks don't understand that, and I respect that. But speaking to the guy who understands these things, it is extremely important.
It seems like common sense.
Thank you.
It seems like what?
Common sense.
Yes. But I think,
Like, I don't want the guy in charge of the scene not knowing how to do CPR or something.
But if your conception of the chief or the deputy chief is a more administrative role rather than an out in the field.
It'll
role,
never be that way. Never be that way. Not in an agency our size. If we have people that are confined to an office, then we're wasting taxpayer money. Everyone has to have a role in emergency scene response and operations, everyone. From the chief on down. If you can't go to a call for service, you should not have had a Saybrook police patch on your shoulder. And no one should ever forget the trust that's placed in our role. So everyone should be able to respond to a call for service. And I went to one the other day, right? And it's just what happened.
basically, a person can get this certification. They may not necessarily come into the agency with it, but they can achieve it.
I would caution the commission in setting themselves up for failure with that. I would first require it and see who the people are that apply. And if we find out we didn't find anyone in that round and we have to adjust qualifications, maybe that's one of the things that we adjust. But you want, so the town of Old Saybrook, our public safety community is a very tight-knit and special community. And Old Saybrook has always benefited from having people in positions that are very well-rounded in all domains of public safety. If you have just the cop, or just the firefighter, or just the EMS professional, that does not make for a great incident commander. Someone who is well-rounded is best suited for administrating and commanding an emergency scene because they have the knowledge of those 3 different silos, and it gives them the foresight when they're doing their incident management planning in their head, and as the scene evolves to include those elements. And so Old Saybrook has always benefited from having leaders both in the police department and the fire department that are very, very well-rounded. So important for scene management. One of the other things I wanted to comment on is as we look at our internal promotions, I wanted to make sure that we didn't out-qualify our staff. So we know that we can only give a limited amount of professional development opportunities to our staff, being a small agency. So we don't want to create criteria that is so far reaching or only, illustrates one person's career because they've happened to have that opportunity. So we want to make sure that if we go and we decide we're going to promote 2 lieutenants, that the criteria that we choose, the qualifications to obtain that position aren't so lofty that you're cutting out your opportunity to meet staff that's looking to be promoted.
Okay, well, that's actually a good point because on the position of lieutenant, you had listed supervisory experience. So my question would be, well, what kind of criteria are you looking for in terms of years or experience of that sort?
I assume that meant as a sergeant.
No,
No,
it specifically doesn't mean that. So if I wanted sergeant, tenure as a sergeant, I would have written that. Supervisory experience can be lots of different things. That could be a program you're assigned, right? Maybe you've supervised as a patrolman, the bike patrol program or the DARE program, where you've had experience working with subordinate personnel, you've had experience doing quality control, quality assurance, you've had some budgeting experience. Because an agency our size, there's only a limited number of people who can get promoted to the rank of sergeant. But for us to be successful, leadership comes in lots of different sizes, shapes, and colors. And therefore, we should allow people who have had supervisory experience to be competitive in this process.
When I was reading through this and you talked about the EMS and EMT, I like the way you wrote here, or ability to obtain, must obtain. So that kind of covers us if we put that in there. So it gives you that period where we could get that done. And that's one of the things I read that I thought was important because I know what the EMS means.
And you'll notice in that example, and thank you for bringing that up, ability to obtain was assigned to the lieutenant positions, an internal promotion.
Right.
But must have was assigned to someone who might come from outside of our agency.
And that would be a deputy chief.
Correct.
but I thought everybody employed here already was an EMT.
Everyone has to be an emergency medical responder, which is the basic level. The next level up is an emergency medical technician,
Okay.
then paramedic and instructor at whatever level you're certified at.
And we have all that information, so if you gave it to us, we would know how many we have in each category, correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think you should make that available to us, because I think that'll help us understand where we gotta get to the next level.
So it's in your budget book? So,
I left my budget
Yeah.
book at home tonight.
but I'll just tell you real quick where it is. So, where we list out vacation days, because contractually, according to the collective bargaining agreement, if you're certified at the EMT level, you get 3 extra vacation days a year. And so in the list of vacation days, there's a whole column that says EMT certification.
Mhm.
3 means you got it, 0 means you don't.
Is there a page number on that?
Page 4.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah, you're welcome. Again, I want to frame it for you guys to be successful. I want to be a resource to you. I don't want to be the decision maker. That is your job.
We'll be successful.
I have no doubt. I just think it will take collaboration and open communication.
I think to Jackie's point, I think we must have to schedule a special meeting where we're not doing anything else and all come prepared to say, this is the hierarchy that I think that we should have, then start looking at the qualifications and hammer through those.
I think that's a very good
Yeah, I think
idea.
everybody should bring their own personal structured chart
Well, yes, but
and be able to.
if you can find your,
Collaborate with
if you can
others.
find your thought processes to those 3
The ones that are
options.
suggested.
Right, so there's 3 options. If you can find your decision-making and your discussion to those 3 framed options, you might be more successful than 7 different organizational charts coming in. My suggestion is, along what you're saying, is goal setting. I've given you 6 decision-making points. Make sure that the first one, decide the organizational structure of the agency, is what you must accomplish before you leave the room next meeting.
Yeah, that's what.
Everything after that is going to flow. That's your biggest decision
So
point.
just for us that are sitting here right now, does anybody, I mean, looking at these options, does everyone feel comfortable with one of them? I mean, not that we're deciding tonight, you don't have to say which one, but within this, it's just,
I think this book was super helpful.
Okay.
And gave a lot of guidance and direction, so I'm comfortable with what was
the
presented.
choice there. Okay.
Yeah,
You're comfortable with one of the three?
I am too.
yeah, so
I
am
am
I.
too.
I am as well. I know, out of the sky comes the.
Guys are all, you know, Chubb, my suggestion is, look, I'm available. If individual commissioners have questions, call me, stop in, unsweetened iced tea with lemon. And, you know, you can pick my brain to help you formulate your thought process, and then just come ready next meeting to make that one very important decision, because everything else is gonna flow from there.
Well, let me take a straw poll. I am guessing that there is consensus around chief, deputy, 2 lieutenants.
Yes. Go for me, yes.
With the migration to chief, deputy chief, captain, lieutenant?
Well, they would have to proceed in tandem. That's the way I look at it. I don't want to be adding a lieutenant adding a second lieutenant until there is the, you know, aging out of, or the retirement of the master sergeant, because I don't see how,
I don't think you can do that.
I don't see how you maintain your force of 25. That's why I was focusing on that before, because I think we are facing a brick wall on that end of things. And I want to make sure that whatever we do, we are, you know, working within that constraint.
Yeah, I don't, just so you know. I think that if you created only one lieutenant position, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. I think you're just putting yourself behind the 8 ball, and then when it comes time to interview 2 lieutenants eventually for captain, one gets to say, I've been a lieutenant for a year and a half, and the other person gets to say, I've been a lieutenant for 9 months. And I think that you're setting somebody up with an unfair advantage. I would not do that. I think after you choose the structure, right, and one of the options shows, 2 of the options show a migration of structure, I think then you have to ask me, how will this work with the existing 25?
And I
And
think
you're
Chuck
telling
wanted that
us-
before.
And you're telling us that it certainly can.
I would not have proposed any of these options if it's not something that I thought I couldn't get done at the
Within
right time.
25.
There is, let me be clear for everyone watching. There is absolutely nothing tonight, before tonight, when I handed you this document that's online, that asks to add any additional sworn personnel to our agency. Do I think we need more? I do.
know you do.
Do I wish the perf study for $100,000 was actually gonna give us some information on that? I do. I'm sad that it's not. However, this structure change has nothing to do with adding personnel. We will remain at 25 full-time law enforcement positions with any of the structures, A, B, or C, proposed in this document.
Okay,
Well,
I
then-
think that's a very important piece of information.
Then I am more convinced than ever that there is a consensus building for the option chief, deputy, 2 lieutenants, and the master sergeant position fades over time.
That's
Attrition.
that's option B, correct?
Well, so there's option A, and then there's option B. So I think that over this next month time, I think you have to
Narrow it down.
narrow it down, right? Because they're similar, but different. And I think that that's what will take, you know, some
Well,
thought
and
process.
also, like you're saying, the transition going into deputy chief, captain, and lieutenant. Like, I think, you know, we'll have to also grapple with that at the next meeting.
I think it's
See
just,
if
I think you're
that's-
setting yourself up, what Jackie's looking for, a plan.
Yeah.
Here is our plan. Here's what we're going to do. And I am very happy that the discussion tonight was beneficial towards our current employees, right? So I think that those who are watching or those that will watch will hear a discussion that says, we value you, and we're hoping that some of you want to be part of a future administrative structure of the agency.
I am looking at option B at the top of, well, it's figure 1.3. I think that is what we're in
Yes.
consensus on.
Well,
I agree. I just think that there needs to be a little bit more exploring. And I think that it's important to have all 7 commissioners present to make that decision.
I think that's true. I, for one, need to walk away from this discussion at this point. I think and just absorb, we keep throwing a lot of information out. You keep throwing a lot of information out.
Not throwing it out, giving it.
No, but the thing of it is, it seems every time one point comes up or a question comes up, there's more information that surrounds it. So it's a lot to go through.
Right, and please know, with all due respect, in 4 hours, I could have all these processes done, everything in front of you, new jobs, the whole 9 yards done. That should not be my role here. And I want the commission
But
involved.
we
I
have to
think this
buy
is
into
important.
this, yes.
100%.
And you gave us all the information that's really good. So,
Okay, so what's the takeaway at this point?
On the agenda next month, you're deciding on the structure. Done.
that means we have to have a special meeting.
I thought we were having, yeah, that's what Renee had meant.
My
That's what
suggestion
happened.
is always special meeting,
I don't
I feel like we get more work done.
I don't think it's a special meeting for this.
Not just for the hierarchy, but then to start looking at the qualifications.
I would like to come in next meeting a little bit more prepared and organized and
Yeah.
have an outline of what.
And
how
Jackie,
to
seriously,
move
call
forward.
me. I'm more than happy to, so this document here took 5.5 hours to put together. I sat down, wrote it, did research,
That's how long it took me to
made
read.
charts, got it out to you, okay? I've been your police chief for 15 years. I've gone to some pretty high-level professional development schools. This is what I do. If you all were able to do this with no training, we'd have a bigger problem on our hands, right? So this is my job. This is what I do. This has been my life's work. It should take all of you that have not had any of these experiences and have not been exposed to any of these professional development opportunities, time to digest.
It's a lot.
So that's okay. We'll do it together.
Right, so we keep going.
I'm fine with digesting, but I just feel like government just always has to move so slow.
Well, it does.
It moves slow, but I think that it has to have time. There has to be like a timeline. You do this on this date and just to keep it flowing. I just feel like we're always.
I think if you make that decision next meeting, like I'm suggesting, I think the following meeting, I come in with a board with qualifications and titles, and we have a big collaborative workshop on what qualifications go where. We can move it in one spot, have more discussion, decide to move it in another spot, but at the end of the day, we should have the qualifications nailed down.
All right, so Renee, you're suggesting having a meeting, a special meeting, so that when we do come in for our next scheduled meeting, we already have like a lay of the land to present.
I thought Renee was suggesting a special meeting to make that
To
decision.
make a
Yes.
hierarchy
Right.
decision.
But
And
then
then
that-
look at the qualifications and then start working on those so that at the next meeting, we could be ready to be done with that.
Right,
That's my thought, but I don't like things dragging on,
No.
so.
yeah.
And I hear that. I think some of you need 30 days on this. Because this is the biggest decision you make. Once you decide on structure, everything else will come quicker.
Okay. So I agree with Renee.
So you don't want 30 days to decide this.
No, I would like to have a meeting with the commissioners, and then when we come in for our next agenda meeting, we have
Our next regular
our
meeting.
next scheduled meeting. We have more to work from instead of this back and forth.
I just don't know if that'll be beneficial. I think you have to start with one decision point, and that is structure. And so
Right.
I think if you do your research, you study more, you have those questions answered, and next time we
I
do
think if
that.
we're together, we're able to bounce ideas off each other and collaborate and communicate, and we'll be able to reach that structure in a healthy manner.
And I think what it comes down to is, one suggestion is that we accomplish that at a special meeting, and the other suggestion is we accomplish it at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And I'm happy going either way, I have to say.
Well, if we have a special meeting, everybody's involved.
Right.
And I think that's important, that we come to the next meeting and say, this is what's on the agenda, this is what we're going.
This is
with."
what we talked about, then
I'm sorry, when you say the next meeting, do you mean the next regular?
Yes, the next
Yeah.
regular meeting, yeah.
I think it should be the only thing on your agenda next meeting. There is nothing, unless we have some personnel stuff to deal with, but
Things come up.
otherwise, I think that this is the most important. You're through the budget process, you're through your bylaws. This is the most important thing in front of this body right now.
I'm comfortable leaving it till the next meeting, but if everybody else wants to go a special meeting, I can do that too. You know, maybe we can try and find a date and see if that even works.
Or maybe the special meeting comes after the structure decision, because as things start moving rapidly, maybe that's when we have the special meetings. I would not rush this big picture decision. But again, commission decision, not mine.
I think it is useful to have this as a sole item on the next regularly scheduled meeting, because I think there are other constituencies in town that I would like to consult with.
I'm fine with that, but if the agenda comes out and it has anything else, I'm crossing it out with a marker and I'm making motions to get rid of them on that night of the meeting. Just because this happens every time. This has happened with the bylaws. It was, well, we'll do it next month. Oh, no, there's too much other stuff. That's fine, but next month, I want it to be just that.
We can't have a special meeting to come up with the structure and be prepared for the next meeting. I think that's the most important thing, is we gotta figure out a structure.
or just have a conversation.
And if you don't have a special meeting, we all can't meet.
So I think it's very possible that as we go through the agenda tonight, that there might be a need for a special meeting at some point and not related to this topic. So perhaps listen to a little foresight, I say, and put this on the agenda for next month.
It's always on.
Well, you know what
the
we can do? We can leave it where it sits right now, and then we can talk among ourselves.
Well, that's right, nothing precludes us from
Nothing
talking
precludes
to
us
each other.
from deciding that we're gonna
You know, we can
schedule a special meeting. We can ask the chief to,
see where we are.
you know, if we think that that is the best way to go.
But we don't want to talk about schedule meeting or not schedule meeting longer than we've talked
That's
about
right.
like,
Right.
the
That's
agency
right.
structure and the promotional process, right?
Right,
I mean,
because
that's-
Renee
at some
and I
point,
are
that
like-
gets a little bit counterproductive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have outlined for you a path to success. Take it, don't take it, but make a decision.
Let's move this.
Okay, I am happy to consider that the end of the discussion for tonight, and let's move on to the next agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest, make a suggestion? We certainly have a member from the public who indicated that he wanted to speak. May I suggest
Sure.
doing that first, and that way the commissioners that have to leave virtually don't have to try to log back on or wait
I
for
think that
executive
is a-
session, that type of thing.
A very helpful suggestion.
And the public doesn't have to.
Yeah, the public doesn't have to wait.
Right, so we
except-
move the public up.
I invite a motion to amend
Hopefully
the
that helps.
agenda so that we have to have a 2/3 vote on amending the agenda. That we move comments from the public up to the next item on our agenda.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now going to.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry, Jackie?
No, Mark.
No.
Mark,
You made
I
it.
made
Oh, you
it,
made it,
yeah.
okay.
So we are now going to go to public comment.
I
Sir?
have one. Do you have one?
No.
Oh. Edson Bourne, 87 Church Street, Commissioners, Chief. thank you very much, Chief, because I really didn't want to be here this long.
I figured as much.
But I appreciate hearing all the discussion about not making any headway on the topic in question. Anyway, I had a question about Police Executive Research Forum, PERF. Will they be including staffing issues in their study? Does anyone know?
No.
No? I thought, Carl had mentioned that a year ago when you were looking at that other group of people. It's just what's in the Harbor News. They're just looking to see if people are happy working in Old Saybrook or not.
Correct. I
No,
specifically
it's-
asked during the onboarding meeting if they would be doing any staffing analysis at all, or giving us a suggestion on structure, which we're talking about tonight, and the answer is a vehement no.
Yeah, I thought if we waited long enough, they'd come up with the structure for us. This is probably a waste of time, but maybe it's something the commission could consider. I was wondering if they're not gonna look at the position of dispatcher, if the commission would consider it. I believe you can contract out for that service. I believe in the town annual report, the cost for dispatch services was $711,000 plus some change. That seems to me it would pay for the deputy chief and the 2 lieutenants and some other things. I don't know what the service would cost, maybe a couple $100,000 a year. I don't think it would cost $700,000. The other thing is, I was wondering, when this commission was elected a couple of years ago, they were talking about the chief's evaluation. Is there anything on that? Annual evaluation? Or are we just waiting for him to retire?
Sir, this is not a question and answer session. It's a public comment session. I appreciate your question. And my email address is online.
I think a more appropriate response would be, it's one of the executive goals of the chief of police this year to figure out one way or another what we're doing. Having one, not having one, putting it to rest. So that was released, that was released in.
Writing somewhere, I didn't know who said it, whether it was.
That was me.
That was
That was me.
And there was I don't want to get into a back and forth, but progress has been made.
Good luck to you, chief, whatever you choose to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, commission.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me come.
You got it. You got
So
it.
it's 6:30 every night?
6:30 is when the commission meetings are, yes.
Is there anyone else?
And Larry, is there
There are no
anybody,
hands raised.
any hands raised in the virtual audience?
No.
All right. All right. I'd like to invite a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters pertaining to collective bargaining and also an employee matter. Chief, I invite you to be in attendance for both. Thank you.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you for coming tonight.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It is 8:38. We are coming out of executive session. Let's go to the next item on our agenda, comments from the chief of police.
The only thing I want to say, which I know I've said before, but I think it's important, the level at which the agency is operating, the level at which our personnel are committed to their job and carrying out services and our traditional, non-traditional services that we offer the public is just superior. I mean, we have been very, very busy. Our evening shift last night had a CPR save. They were there, so important for our EMS program, right? So we're there within minutes. We carry our equipment in. We have our defibrillator. We gave a shock. And the person was revived by our staff and then our partners from Middlesex Hospital, the paramedic, and certainly our partners with the Old Saybrook ambulance. It's a system that works together to save lives. And, we do a lot of things as an agency. But having the ability to save another life is monumental. And so when you look at the human beings that we employ that deliver these services, we have to be thankful for them, and we have to make sure that they get the proper compensation and proper benefits, because without them, somebody yesterday would have passed away. Without them, someone, the other day would have answered to a fraud and been defrauded and wouldn't be getting their money back because there would have been no action from a well-trained patrolman. And so day in and day out, we're delivering superior services. And I'm just really proud of what we're doing for the community. And I want you to know that because you are that top box, right? In the organizational structure that we're talking about. And you do all have constituents. And my guess is you probably hear more bad than good. And I'm here to tell you that there is way more good than bad. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Comments from commissioners?
I would like to tag on to what Chief just said. I had the privilege of attending a DARE meeting at the middle school. Officer Resco is one of our resource officers who spearheads that program, did an excellent job. The kids were engaged and they are really, really excited about it. And he has, keeps their attention, he asks them questions, and you see him in the hallway and they go up to him, so it's really great. So thank you.
It's very good to hear. Very
Yeah.
important program.
Yeah.
Very, very important program.
Any other commissioner comment? Good.
No, I'm all set too.
Carl?
He's not on.
Okay, that's right.
Yes.
I have nothing, so I invite a motion to adjourn. Oh, I should say, thank you for a very helpful meeting tonight.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
I invite a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.